I'll quickly run you through what we're going to talk about today as of now, and also, give you a sense of what are we covering over the next 20, 25 minutes, right? So what we're looking at is data, deriving analytics and insights out of it, end of the day, right? And broadly speaking, we're looking at three different lenses that we're going to cover and also understand by the end of it. First is listening analytics, meaning what is the user or the consumer talking about a brand or an agency. Number two is talking analytics. What is the impact of we as a brand say have? And number three, asking analytics, getting data right from the source and trying to make a sense of that, right? This forms the premise of our discussion today. And going forward, what we have here in the form of all these panelists, right, is about several decades of experience having managed data, looking at data and getting a sense of what you should be doing afterwards. So again, coming back to the topic, data and analytics, the backbone for holistic customer experience now, as of today, and also in the future, right? So Kalpana, given your role leading the digital transformation practices, right, how do you leverage insights from data when it comes to customer centricity as a pointer?
Hi, everyone. So we heard other panel members also talking about customer centricity. I think that is something which is, I would say, the backbone of marketing. And now when we are talking about the data, that again becomes the base for doing anything that we do or plan to do with the data. So when I talk about how we are leveraging insights from data, keeping in mind the customer centricity, I believe we don't think about customer centricity as something that we have to think about. It's ingrained in everything that we plan to do. So when we are capturing data from various sources, and when I say various sources, we always keep in mind from the behavioral kind of a data that we capture, or the data that we are capturing through various listening or the customer interactions from the news and everywhere, we always try to see how it is going to benefit and how we can derive some value out of this for our customers across the different phases of their customer journey. So starting from when we are trying to identify the right kind of audience, we are capturing data, we are trying to reach how we can get the behavioral inputs, how we can see what they like, what they dislike, where they do want to be reached upon. So somebody might be interested in emails, the other might be more inclined towards a WhatsApp kind of a communication. So where do we reach out to them, how we are communicating with them? So from the data we are able to capture insights about the content strategy, about our media, about their customers requirement. From the customer care, there was another panel which was talking about customer care.
Yep.
So what are their likes and dislikes in terms of their products, their feedback about their partners? So all of those insights can go back to different functions of the organization. It's not restricted to the marketing only, but to different functions of the organization, and improve upon their experiences.
True. Shekhar, coming to you now, from your experience having successfully launched products and services in consumer finance and insurance, right? How does data enable you to deliver exceptional experience end of the day?
Yeah. So, in my view, right, data definitely elevates the customer experience to the next level, provided we need to make use of the data in the right manner. Let me just take an example. For one of our client, which is an insurance client, we were managing customer retention for them, and which is called as persistency in the insurance parlance. And so we built out normal traditional way to manage that is to build predictive models and segment all of those customer based on their risk, which is high risk, low risk, medium risk, and so on and so forth. But that is only probably one part of the entire solution. What we need to look at is let me just take my own example, right? I use credit card for making various payments. See, if I am making use of my credit card for making my insurance premium, I will look at my credit cycle. I will look at what is the amount of grace period which is available for an insurance payment and calculate it so that I get the maximum leverage from a credit standpoint. And which means that lot of customers like that will pay at a particular date, irrespective of where does that particular policy status stand, whether it is in a due date period or a grace period or a lapse period, whichever it is. But he as a consumer is very clear about when is he going to make the payment, and that pattern will be evident in the data, right? And if we are able to make use of that pattern, recognize that pattern, then the kind of experience what we are able to give it to the customer is very, very different. Which means that there needs, instead of having a segment level interaction calendar, which is a very traditional way of using it, everybody does that now. We need to get into a more like a nano segmentation, or I will say that in simple parlance, I will say that customized interaction calendar is something which is extremely important. Which means that every individual who's sitting in this room will get a call only when that is required, or he will get an SMS or an email for any kind of reminder only when he want to get a any kind of interaction, whatever channel it could be. And the company will have to recognize that particular fact, and only when he breaches that elasticity is also defined using the data. Then if we are able to do that, the entire experience of a customer gets into a very, very different level. Our experience says that when we have deployed the solution to this insurance client over a period of time, from a IRDA ranking of 13 to 15, they were, from a retention standpoint, they were at around 13th. They moved to top 3 in a span of around 3 years, which is substantial. We are talking about almost like millions of customers understanding that there is an organization which is looking at my experience, there is an organization which is looking at my data and giving me very customized option, takes the entire experience to a different level. And I strongly believe that data really can make a difference, provided it is used in the right manner.
So essentially, you don't get a ping unless you breach those thresholds. 3 days before the payment or something like that, you don't do that, you don't get a message. You do that, and then this happens, right? So coming to you, Rajesh, now, your experience has been predominantly around customer experience, right? So how do you leverage data and the insights that you derive out of that when it comes to customers' experience down the line?
So thank you, Santosh, for that question. For us in customer service, every interaction is a data point for us, right? So when we talk about such kind of good data, right, this helps us to understand or probably have a deep knowledge about our customers, right? As one of our panelists, in their previous conversation, they mentioned, right? Today, customers don't want, things or the way they were treated in past, right? They want to be treated in a good way today, right? How can we do that? Is basically understand what their behavior is, right? So data helps us to understand what consumer behavior is all about, right? On the basis of that, you build a successful business model, which not only helps you, in terms of creating revenue. At the same time, this also helps in creating confidence in customers' mind, right? As Suresh rightly mentioned, right? Data is very important and crucial. And yes, it is, because this helps us to create a customer-centric organization, which helps us to understand the uniqueness of the customer, right? And that's the reason data is, in all fair means, very much valuable and important to us.
Yep. Very, very well said, right? Generally, the first question that comes up when we talk about data, right, is across mediums and channels. First, about how it is being gathered, and also how are you leveraging it and using it afterwards, right? I'm sorry. So we have Ajith here. Given your experience as an information security exec, right? So how do you see this entire thing playing out and the impact of it afterwards as well?
Thanks for this question, and good evening, everyone. So that's a perennial challenge and a perennial problem. Possibly we will never be able to solve, right? But we can only try to come close to solving it. sometime back, say many years back, the main problem used to be, do I have, enough data to do things, because I didn't have enough means to collect data. Then, we tried solving problems like, okay, I have so much of data, but then the data is obsolete. Now, what do I do with it? Because the customers I can't connect. Thereafter, as the regulations started coming in, especially the data privacy regulations, now the problem is, how do I collect data? Now, one of the key problems that we face with any data privacy regulation, data minimization and collection limitation, right? So it's so today we are at an age where I know what to collect, but then there is a law that is stopping me from collecting because I don't have a consent, because I'm not satisfying certain criterias, etc., right? So this is a never-ending hen and chicken problem. In the previous session, the panelists were talking about how do we get connected customers. Connect Insight is a great product that handles social media. Now, how do I connect a customer on social media to my CRM when both those data points don't have a unique identifier, right? So unless I know what is my Twitter handle name, how do I know it is Ajith in CRM database, right? Now, how do I integrate that? So today I have a problem of plenty. With 5G coming in, this problem is only going to exaggerate. So we have so much of data, but today we don't know how to use it. We are also talking about edge computing. So where we want to kind of, target or, give customer experience at that, that fraction of a second, rather than waiting for the next 24 hours before the data flows in through my, Finacle, etc. And then I kind of actually I'm able to identify that customer when he is no longer interested in it. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing today. How do we, integrate these using systems like CDP and CRM? CRM is slowly becoming a word which is second in line. CDP is taking over. So how do we, use CDPs of the world using structured, unstructured data to kind of actually marry the data points, create a customer single view, right? I think that's more important. The previous speaker was talking about not sending 1 million communications, but just send 100, but then make it relevant because the customer has to respond, because there's a cost to it. We have the DLT regulations from TRAI, which is further imposing, mandatory consent on service explicit promotional messages. So now, SMS is going to become more and more tough to send. But then where do I go, right? WhatsApp is also going to be tightening the screws very soon in terms of how do we send promotional messages. So these are some of the challenges that, we are facing today, but then through intelligent ways of solutioning these systems, I think a lot of this can be eased out, and it's essentially not only security and privacy by design, it's also at the designing stage itself. If I think about how to join these various systems where I have so much of data coming from the various sources, I should be able to address a lot of these concerns from start itself.
Basically make the messaging contextual, reduce the number of messages that go out, and keep it very, very valuable, right? Yep. That's the hope. So when it comes to data points also, we do have access to multiple data points across all the different tools that we leverage, right? But ultimately, all of us also come with a bias of, these three are what I would ideally use to leverage my decision making from. So Rajesh, given your customer experience lens, right, what are those 1 or 2 data points that you utilize to perform this?
So from customer standpoint, I think there are 3 things that are very critical. One is what customer needs, right? Secondly is their purchase pattern, right? And what is their overall behavior, right? So from a data standpoint, when you collect all this information, right, you get to know the entire life cycle of a customer along with the purchase pattern, right? So this not only helps you to draft strategies, but also when you implement these strategies, the chances of you going wrong is almost 0, right? Because you already have the entire pattern. So you know what their past is, you know what they have purchased recently, basis the data point that you collect, you can also estimate what are they going to purchase in future, right? This not only helps your marketing budget, but also ensure that the customer has been given the superlative experience, right? Just imagine you are trying to buy a XYZ product to say probably 2 or 3 days down the line, and all of a sudden you get a notification on your app stating, hey Santosh, you have a 20% off on this product, right? So this is what we are talking about, keeping customer first. So I think that's all what I want to say.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Sekhar, coming to your experience, what are such 1 or 2 data points that you would leverage to ensure the best experience is delivered?
In my opinion, one of the biggest metric which can actually drive the entire customer experience is customer effort score. So CSAT, NPS, and a whole lot of that, a whole lot of metrics related to that is actually connected to the effort which the customer is actually putting in. I'll take another example. We were working with a legacy bank, been in banking for almost like 100 years, more than 100 years rather. During their process of their banking, they have acquired a lot of banks, small and big and medium and all of that. So which means that from a technology standpoint, they have got so many different systems which are there, which can't be integrated just like that, because of the fact that they are into legacy systems. It's a Herculean effort for them to do that. And due to which, who's suffering? It is actually the consumer who's banking with that particular bank is what is suffering. The consumer calls up, say for example, their contact center. They wanted to raise an issue. It could be something related to a selling or credit or whatever could be the reason. And they wanted to raise a concern, but the person who's on the other side of it, the advisor, he needs to go through so many number of systems. Some, if I remember right, with that bank, what I'm referring to, they had to go through 17 systems to understand what is the customer, what has been the history of the customer in terms of the issue what he is raising, what has been his journey, all of that, and then try and give a response. So we are talking about an interaction which of almost like 30 minutes for a consumer to be there on the line to raise his issue, which is absolutely ridiculous, right? If you look at it from that standpoint, the effort what a consumer is putting in is so high. It is next to impossible that he will give a good CSAT rating or an NPS rating. He will not. So so some of the solutions what we deployed was in terms of a data, entire re-engineering, and bring the entire, build out a platform wherein all the systems are connected to each other, and give a view to the advisor in a click of a button. So from a 30-minute conversation, suddenly post that the solution got deployed, the conversation is ending at 4 or 5 minutes. So we are talking about the effort of a consumer. That is something which is a metric which needs to be looked at by every organization. What is the effort which a consumer is putting in? If that is managed well, your NPS will improve, your CSAT will improve, your customer retention will improve, your new sales will improve. Almost every metric which is related to their business will improve if people are paying attention to the consumer effort. So that is what I feel a point.
Essentially, have the customer spend as little time as possible and also drive as much value as possible. Right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Kalpana, coming back to you, what are those data points that you would leverage when you're looking at all of these responses, right?
So the last line that you said, spending as less time. If I think from a marketing campaign perspective, probably I would want just an opposite of that. I would want my customers to spend as much time as they can on connecting with my content, trying to engage more and more, to spend more time on my website. So while everybody else has already spoken about the important parameters or the metrics. I think I'll speak from the perspective of the customer care part of the business and from the campaign perspective. So some of the important, and though they appear to be very small things, if a customer is coming to me, how quickly I've been able to respond to them. A very simple metrics, a turnaround time, or how quickly we are able to close. What is the rate of closure of the complaints or the issues or even the queries? It's
Got
not
it. Huh.
so that could be one aspect. Secondly, when we are reaching out to customers and we've seen that there's a huge amount of the data is available, but at the same time, people are also bombarded with a lot of content. Now, in order to be able to create the right kind of messaging so that the customer is not putting their efforts here and there going to find the right kind of information, if you are able to do that, maybe you will have a higher click to visit ratio to your website. So it could be those kind of metrics also which are very important. If people are reaching to my content but they are not engaging with that, maybe then I'm not doing the right thing, I'm not giving the right experience. So
True.
then these smaller things can also become very important, critical from a campaign or a support perspective.
Look at the minutest detail, pick it up, and make sure you deliver.
Things have already been spoken about.
Yep. And when it comes to all of these different practices, tools, right? Things keep evolving over a period of time. Things do change, whether we like it or no. So with these things coming in, right? Technologies like AI, even metaverse for that matter, right? How do you look at the ability to gather data and also the ability to leverage it down the line as a information security executive again?
So again, with these technologies that are coming in and many more in pipeline, I think it's again the same thing. It's a problem of plenty, right? Uh, with these technologies are also coming, evolving laws, right? So on one hand, you're getting more opportunities to gather data and know the customer, know the demographics of the customer, know things about the customer that till yesterday I didn't know, or I didn't know how to capture. But then there are going to be other laws that are going to prevent you from capturing. So that's where the friction point between, say, a typical infosec team or a CISO versus the marketing, where the CISO would always be showing the rule book and the marketing team would say, I have these, I'm using metaverse, I'm using 5G, why not, collect all these points, and how do I? So I think answering a question, the only answer out here is you need to balance out. You can't have best of both, right? In the sense you can't error on the extreme ends, but you need to be somewhere in the middle. And there has to be ways and ways. I think the earlier speakers were referring to customer satisfaction, right? So now with more and more knowledge to customers about how their data shall be protected, that's coming into domain, people are becoming more vocal, and the use of social media is only increasing, right? So at the drop of an hat, you have somebody tweeting and saying this is what is happening. Delhi airport is a classic example, right? So so how do I balance that, where I have the ability of collecting so much of data, but at the same time I don't cross that red line where I lose the customer forever and there's a permanent brand reputation. It's far cheaper to retain a customer than to get a new lead and nurture him from scratch. So I think these are some of the challenges that I face actually in my day-to-day.
Essentially, be careful of the data that you leverage and make sure you only pick up whatever is valuable and utilize it afterwards, right? So as part of this discussion, again, in fact, when we caught up for the mock runs before as well, one thing that's been in the back of my mind is all of us have access to so many tools, right? And so many data points. And we also come with 15, 20 years of experience overall. So ultimately, when it comes to the time of taking that decision, what would you base your decision upon? Would it be data completely, or gut feeling, or a mix of both of these? Kalpana, to go first.
Like as we were discussing earlier also, I think data is very important, no doubt, but it is as good as any other entity. If we are not using our own brains, we are not using the insights or the experience that we have, that we call instinct or a gut feeling, we might not be able to get value out of it. So it could, if we are leaving everything to data, it's just going to be a really bad master for us. If we are using it well, then certainly it is going to serve the purpose it is supposed to. So gut and Data, I would say 50-50.
A mix of both of them. Ajit?
The answer to this is what I'm doing, right? So supposing if I'm starting a new lending business or a vertical, right, and if I don't have enough data with me, I have to start somewhere. So possibly I use my experience to, maybe guesstimate to a large extent, and, create models where I know which customer I can sell or, or give this loan. Now that experience is also basis data, right? So it's not come just because I'm guesstimating. There is some precedence, some reference point that I'm making or using to actually guesstimate. So even if I'm guesstimating, it's again basis data. So my answer is data has to be 100%, but it's just that in that given situation, one may have an illusion that it's having a, the data part is less and the guesstimate part is more, but end of the day that guesstimate is again basis the data understanding of the past. So it has to be mainly data and data only.
It's the qualitative data that you have gathered over the period.
So as you begin, use whatever is available, and as you progress, right, pick up all those pointers in between and become better, basically.
So as you begin, you start with whatever is available, and as you progress, again you continue with what is available, essentially, right?
Just add to that. Sekhar, your take on this?
I'll say that it's probably around 50-50. When I'm into where I am now, I'll say that it is 50-50. Probably 10 years back, I'll say that it used to be 80-20. Wherein I will look at the data, but it is primarily the gut which was driving it initially.
80% of it.
Yeah, when I'm in the business side of it. So when I moved into the analytics side of it, when I started looking at the data, and there as well, the instinct play a role. But I will say that the instinct is effectively hypothesis. You create a hypothesis based on your domain experience, based on the understanding of the particular objective, so which is called as hypothesis, and that hypothesis is tested using the data what you have. Like what Ajith mentioned, if you don't have a data, you may go with it's more like a guesstimate. But wherever we are in a position to make use of the instinct and the data together, which is called as hypothesis plus data, which is hypothesis testing, and then go with it, right? And in some of the industries, for example, healthcare, or anything related to healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and all of it, I don't think guesstimate really works there. There, it has to be entirely data. You can't really fool around with coming out with a medicine based on guesses. It has to be based on pure data. But when it comes to some of the other industries, you still can, we can afford to have that guess play a role. But something like retail, probably some amount of that experiment is something which can be afforded, but not in some of those industries like healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Definitely not. But at a larger level, Santosh, I will say that 50-50 is my vote on.
Back like down to 50-50 from an 80-20, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So basically build a hypothesis, test it out, take all the information that is available, and make yourselves better, right? Absolutely. Rajesh, coming to you last, what is your take on the same?
So before I answer that, Santosh, I think it's going to be a tiebreaker, because I completely agree with Ajith, and so you have a 2 50-50s and 1 and 2's basically 100, right? So eventually we'll come to you for a tiebreaker on this. Having said that, when you talk about the question basically that you asked, right? Data is pretty much very important. I would say 100%. Yeah. I'll tell you the reason why, right? Today, a lot of people, they want to become a quick entrepreneur, right? So they know what they are doing. They know what experience they have, right? They have already invested that time in understanding what they want to do, right? All it needs is a good data. As Kalpana rightly mentioned, right? It needs to be qualitative data, right? The moment you have that kind of qualitative data, right? Here are the things that needs to follow, right? The data needs to be in context. It needs to be reliable and timely available, right? So when you meet this ticks, right? Chances of you going wrong are 0, right? And hence I said, data is 100% important from my aspect, and I'm sure Kalpana and Suresh are going to kill me for this, but yeah, I.
Data is very important. It's just that gut is also very important because that is our accumulated experience and knowledge.
Yeah, and just to yeah, I would definitely come to that part, but for me as of now, I would still go with Ajith with 100% data point.
So if I had to break the tie, right, coming from my own experience, having run sales teams and operations teams, right? So you start off with a basic hypothesis, like Sekhar rightly said, saying, if you're running a cold call outbound process, the conversion is about anywhere between 1 to 3%. You call 100 people, maybe one or two of them might end up buying, right? And you start with that hypothesis. As you start making calls, getting data in over a week, over a month, over a quarter, is where you say, you know what, this could be changed, this could be played around with and made better. So I think build a hypothesis, go with that, try it out, get a sense, and then take it forward, right? So again, coming back to 50-50, look at data and then also, utilize your gut experience as well. So that brings us to a close of this conversation, but the panel is open. If you have questions, we can take it across the panel. If there's any questions from the audience, please. Very much. It's been a long day, so thank you very much, everybody, to be here. Thank you, my co-panelists as well. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.